What psilocybin helps to do is to quiet that default mode network so that there's less rigidity. In our culture and our society today, it demands for us to be so on top, running from appointment to appointment, almost the necessity to have that rigidity, which I think can cause quite a bit of stress. So the journey itself is extremely important, but the follow-up work is where we tie it all together into a big
And
bow.
preparation work. Preparation.
Yeah, 3
and
stages. Absolutely, Rita. Good call. 3 stages there. Number 1. Well, I'll even back up and say 4. Our brains, like I said, the next couple of hours, in particular 72 up to maybe 3 to 5 weeks, are a time where our brain is able to take on significant information and able to make lasting changes. And that's what makes this medicine so special.
Content presented in Cheshire Corners is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult a legal professional if you have any questions or concerns about the content of this disclaimer, this series, or the legal implications surrounding psychedelic substances in your jurisdiction.
Hello, welcome to Cheshire Corners. Again, my name is Rita Tsaluk, and let's trip together through the looking glass. We have here at Cheshire Corners Studio our new guest, Dr. Kate Tackett. She is a naturopathic doctor, licensed naturopathic doctor in Colorado, and she is practicing in Boulder, in Broomfield. And more than anything, she likes psychedelics. And she's here to tell us her story. And let's start with it.
Thank you so much, Rita. I appreciate that awesome introduction. I am Dr. Kate Tackett. Licensure-wise, my naturopathic doctor, I graduated from school 20 years ago and had my licensure for over about 10 years. We were only granted that licensure about 10 years ago. Licensure, they actually call it a registration here for us in Colorado. That puts me playing with and working with psychedelics on a personal level for over 30 years. It has afforded me a great level of comfort with psychedelics, multiple different types of psychedelics. And I learned at a very early age how impactful the medicine can be. And I think that's why it stood out to me so strongly, is that I realized that this was the person that I wanted to be. I wanted to be what these medicines were offering me because I knew it was a type of growth and a type of pattern that was just so unique and so powerful. And I'm so glad that I decided to stay with that path. And to fast forward a little bit, that brings us all the way forward to being in, last year, I studied psychedelic medicine with the Integrative Psychiatry Institute that is based out of Niwot, Colorado. The schooling is performed online, but it was a great program where we learned about a lot of different psychedelics, not just the psilocybin, but we focus very heavily on that psilocybin because of where we're at with Prop 122 in Colorado, and that psilocin and psilocybin have been the only of the psychedelics in Prop 122 that have had a program developed for them for use. And I just never thought in my lifetime that we would have such an honor to be able to work with these medicines in a legal medical way. And so I am so grateful to the voters of Colorado for voting on Prop 122. Thank you, voters. And I am so grateful to DORA and to DOR, that is our state regulating agencies, who have developed a program, a regulated model for us to start working with psilocin and psilocybin in a legal medical setting.
That's great, but let's push on brakes. And come back to not doctor yet, just Kate. Kate, why did you decide that natural medicines like psychedelics maybe a path for you?
That's such a great question, Rita. Thank you for taking us back there to the beginning. I was an adventurous child. Well, I grew up on natural medicine, as was more like integrative medicine. We saw conventional doctors and natural doctors as well. But I realized that I really liked botanical medicine and natural medicines quite a bit. Even the setting that you would go see that type of doctor in is such a different setting than a conventional white coat doctor setting. So natural was already in my brain, but I was a very adventurous child. I liked to try things, and that's how I just fell into trying something along with some friends, and I really liked what I found. But I knew that it was so powerful and so influential and had such a marked presence in my being and my spiritual side of myself and even my emotional and intellectual side of me that I knew I wanted more of it.
Tell us maybe about one experience that you can recognize and tell, yes, this one that was different than everything else that changed things around.
I had one experience, and I think that a lot of people may have had experience with the psychedelic as related to music. I am very, very interested in the music scene, and in particular, the bands that I really care for are what we might call jam bands. Things like the Grateful Dead and Fish and bands like this. I went and saw the Grateful Dead down in Seattle. That's where I grew up, in the Seattle area. A remarkable combination of people that were already in an altered state of consciousness. So really what I had found was a match between the psilocybin and a community. And so they're really nailed in my love and finding that community where psychedelics were acceptable and totally fine if you don't do them also, not mandatory by any means. And so that is a very standout, great experience for me to have just realized the potency of community coming together with psychedelics.
Interesting how you touch the community thing. What do you think those people that love psychedelics have in common? Because I have my own thoughts and I just wanted to see if we're on the same page.
Yeah, Rita, I think there's probably multiple ways to answer that question, because I think there's probably multiple different benefits to why we would feel those. But I think if we go to the medical side of it and what the medicine is actually doing for our brains, we are looking at neuronal activity that is not necessarily found with mainstream medicines, or not one that I've heard of before at any rate. So I think that the effects that the psychedelics can have on the brain by new neuronal pathways, it also inhibits what we call the default mode network. And what it offers us is the ability to form new pathways in the brain, new connections in the brain. And so it's kind of like this new experience and new pathways being made at the same time. But we're also stimulating the 5-HT serotonin receptors. So we are pulling out happiness is what we're doing by stimulating those receptors. The default mode network is areas of the brain that are connecting to, that kind of keep us rigid and a little bit task focused. And what psilocybin helps to do is to quiet that default mode network so that there's less rigidity. In our culture and our society today, it demands for us to be so on top, running from appointment to appointment, almost the necessity to have that rigidity, which I think can cause quite a bit of stress. And so the psilocybin comes in and it quiets that default mode network, and it helps us to become more flexible in the brain. And I think that goes along really well with the neuronal connections, making new connections in the brain, and the plasticity of the brain that we were talking about, more flexibility in the brain. So it's a great thing. And this has all been shown on scans in the brain that this is true. This isn't guesswork. This is science.
As we know, psilocybin is not addictive. So we want more to it, but it's not addictive. And I agree with everything you said, but I want to add something that for some reason I'm feeling. I think the community of people who like psychedelics is people who think there is more to it.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And that's why I said there's going to be multiple ways to answer this question. And you just said one that's just so important as well, aside from, affecting, areas of the brain that maybe haven't been stimulated before, or perhaps a happiness we haven't felt before, but really it sparks this curiosity. And it helps us to perhaps feel more in touch with that spiritual side, or a side that maybe we haven't ever been in touch with before. Whether that's just because we haven't been there, or because maybe we had a different religion that was keeping us in a certain place. But it really opens the doors to pathways. So, a great analogy there: opens the pathways in the brain, opens the pathways in life.
When I came from former Soviet Union and now Ukraine, we actually in that area focused much more on natural medicine. And as I learned later, everywhere in Europe, with an exception of one country, Great Britain. In Great Britain, people more into prescription medicines, just like they are here. And it seems like it followed from Great Britain to America. And it settled that way, that people are really looking for quick, just one pill fix it all, instead of slow adjusting of the balance. Because health is a balance. And every time you shift in one way, you have to, when you shift in another way, you have to really be careful not to shift too far. And I think natural medicine is a big answer to a lot of our problems, health problems here. And I think people start recognizing it as well. So it's probably a right time to talk about it, because people finally start recognizing that's what we're missing.
I'm not anti-conventional medicine by any means. We need conventional medicine. We need emergency medicine. But we need natural medicines that come from the earth and our bodies recognize. More natural medicine in the European countries, by far more homeopathic medicines. I'm very impressed by that. To get back to the pill comment there, it's like, is it only one pill? Because if that's going to fix me? Because honestly, if we're looking at somebody, let's just take depression, low mood, moody blues as our example right here as a condition to treat that is very well marked in psychedelic research, depression and anxiety together or apart. There are some great studies between taking an SSRI versus one or two psychedelic sessions with the integration. I say with the integration because that's really where we make the meaning out of everything. The journey is where we are taking in all these kind of awe moments, and maybe not quite making sense of them. Hopefully totally enjoying those moments. But it's over the next several days and several weeks where we're going back and making meaning of them. Now, if you go to the conventional side of things to treat this depression, let's say it's Prozac. That's not a short-term one-pill remedy. This is more of a way to help people. It is to help people, but to blunt feelings and emotions rather than helping to express them. And I think right there alone is such a large difference between psychedelic medicine and being able to extract out the meaning of what we have gotten from the journey. And that's where integration comes in, and that where we spend the integration, where we can have an effect on changing patterns in the brain. And we're actually making a difference in changing neuronal connections in the brain. Prozac's not doing that. So very different paths to be taken. Maybe not one particular path is the correct path for everyone out there, but we have something so powerful and so amazing that has been voted through by our voters, put together by our state, by our government, to start helping people in a higher, meaningful way.
And I like how you touch the subject that for me is extremely important. It's about setting and integration and a whole meaningful experience, because I think that's where the healing lies. We will put it maybe in the category of things, there's something about it. There's more to it. We don't know what it does, but it certainly does it. When we want for our lives, the whole life to work, we are taking those steps, and then I think they work in the most. When person is getting graduated, we're celebrating the graduation, we're talking about the past. When person is getting married, we have it ceremonial. a lot of religions have a prayers between consumption of the food, consumption of wine. And now we're taking a big medicine that will do things to our brain. And we will take it without meaningful consideration and meaningful respect to the medicine. Doesn't make sense. I think there's no reason to separate that big meaning from the medicine. And we need to definitely give it appropriate respect. And one thing comes in, I went a long time ago to Greece, guided us through the medicinal complex that was managed by Hippocrates. And Hippocrates described the doctors that they were hired as a doctor, as a strong person who will make patient to believe that patient is healthy. Yes, doctors will use different means, and they will maybe have a way to cut part of the body if they have to cut like a wound, heal other things. But bigger than that, doctor have to be a strong person who will make patient to believe. Ancient Greece. And we're still trying to figure it out. And I think the big gaps that's getting filled. I don't know. I feel like we are going through psychedelics, putting us on a different path of reviewing what we have and what is different and what we're missing. And maybe there's something more about it.
I agree. I think there's so much more to uncover. I think that we've done, there's been so much great research, really just shows over and over and over that the amount of that we can get out of even just one journey, one session, or for some, maybe that's daily microdosing, different ways to take the medicine and use the medicine depending on the constitution of the person, the mental state of the person, and what the goal of the person is, So it's not one size fits all either. Different ways to use it to possibly get some different journey effects out of it. And by no means is it a one-time, one and done thing. You can certainly continue to add on to your psychedelic experiences. Sometimes in the research, even though we've seen that even just one journey followed up with strong integration, making meaning of the journey and what we came across and learned and saw for ourselves in our journey. That's when integration is when we're meeting with either our facilitator, our psilocybin facilitator, or perhaps a therapist to talk through making meaning of that journey, so that's where the medicine is unfolding itself there. So the journey itself is extremely important, but the follow-up work is where we tie it all together into a big bow.
Preparation work.
Yeah, 3 stages. Absolutely, Rita. Good call. 3 stages there. Number 1, well, I'll even back up and say 4. Screening. Number 1. You have to be a good fit. We have to make sure we're a good fit. That could be a great topic for another conversation another time. Who makes a good fit, or what are the, few minor things that, might be a reason to not do psilocybin or a psychedelic right now, but maybe it's something that you could put in the parking lot for later when the timing's better for your constitution or mental state, or perhaps it's the medications you might be taking right now that might need to be looked at before doing a journey. We always need to be safe about it. So we screen first. And once that screening process is done and somebody's been deemed healthy to be able to do a psilocybin journey, or perhaps it's microdosing, or when we say it's a psychedelic dose, that's more of the in-between size dose. Let's call it a medium-sized dose. So we have microdosing, which is the microdose. We have psychedelic, which is more of the medium-sized dose. And then we have the macro journeys or heroic dosing, where quite a bit of healing can happen. The second one would be preparing, or we call it preparation. So that's where a lot of documents might be signed, talking about touch policy within the journey itself. Would you like hands-on? We're allowed to do a little bit of comforting touch, but you can say no thank you to that at the beginning. Things, just other intentions you would like to set is a great time to do those kind of things through preparation. Lots of paperwork, though, to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we have all your medical history and background documented. Make sure this is a medical program. And so we still carry on as if we are practicing medicine, since that's what we are doing. Following the preparation period, we would then be the journey itself. Different types of journeys that can be decided upon within the preparation phase. This could just be microdosing. That might be the appropriate place to start for one person. Whereas maybe we've had somebody that's been doing microdosing for 5 years and is ready to step into a bigger dosage. The next step up from there would be a psychedelic, which is a medium-sized dose. And up from there, we would start talking about macro journeys rather than microdosing. It's more macro dosing. And sometimes you'll hear it referred to as heroic dosing. So higher end dosing on those, longer time frames, maybe lasting around 6 to 6.5 hours for those journeys. And then the last stage, very, very important. And actually, this is tied into the Colorado regulated model that we do have to practice this if we're doing any type of journeys, and that's integration. Integration work is kind of like the counseling, the therapeutic side of work, where after we've done our journey and, possibly had all these cool things happen in there that maybe we didn't even know how to make sense out of, the brain is in a state of flexibility for the hours and few days and few weeks after doing a psilocybin journey. So what we do is we schedule meetings with our facilitator or the therapist that's going to be in charge of that integration. And we're going to meet with them at least once within 72 hours of that journey. And then we're going to meet with them several more times over the next few weeks. And the reason for this is to really try to capture the new neuronal activity that happens with taking psilocybin. We are able to create new pathways. We are able to, which makes us easier to change habits or create new habits, or possibly cease old habits that we do not want anymore. Just a great time for learning and making change in our lives. Whatever that goal is that we originally set out on, and maybe our goals change throughout our different stages of preparation, journey, and integration. It's a really important part that we do not skip. We always do integration. That's where the meaning making happens, and that we really find where our change and our truth is going to be and extract all that good, fun stuff that came from the journey.
Sounds like you were explaining or you're describing neuroplasticity.
I am describing neuroplasticity, which can be its own talk on it all by itself, because it's such a great word that stands for such a great activity that, honestly, this is kind of the crux of what this medicine has to offer. It has to offer so many different things, the spiritual connection, just the change of self. Neuroplasticity, though, that my friend Jonathan was just referring to, is the plasticity of your brain following psilocybin medicine journey. Our brains, like I said, the next couple of hours, in particular 72 up to maybe 3 to 5 weeks, are a time where our brain is able to take on significant information and able to make lasting changes. And that's what makes this medicine so special.
I want to ask you guys, please like us, please subscribe to our channel. And please put comments and questions here. We want to talk about Alma dose. We want to talk about the future. We want to talk what we can do with this Proposition 122, correct?
Absolutely. Proposition 122 is what our Colorado voters, thank you voters, passed for us to decriminalize psilocybin, DMT, mescaline, and ibogaine. That's right. We do not have any programs, models, regulatory models set up yet for anything aside from the psilocybin, but those are decriminalized for personal use. But Rita has set up something really cool here. We are today at her clinic called Alma Dose. It is one of Denver's newest licensed healing centers. And Rita has set this up. It's really cool as for microdosing right now, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to start microdosing only, and it's going to be event-driven. We'll already have microdosing training session in our books. We have other educational events. We'll have yoga. We will have painting, all gonna have preparation session and integration session.
I think Rita is saying that, this model is so cool that she's set up. I feel like it's a little bit of an ease into the model, the regulatory model. Starting with a microdosing model like this, we're hoping to get an event going in the next 3 to 4 weeks. So in less than a month is what we're really aiming for here. So feel free to ask any questions on Cheshire Corners here. We are here to help. We are here to educate. We are here to make you feel safe.
Exciting. Thank you so
Very exciting.
much.
You guys, one more plea to subscribe to the channel here. I think we're only just building on it and just getting going on it. And there is so much more good stuff to come. Rita has done a lot of hard work here to get this going, and her behind the scenes work has been extremely helpful as well. We're here for education, safety, ethics, good times. Thanks so much for tuning in today, you guys.
Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to Cheshire Corners. Tell me what you think in the comments. And as always, don't get psyched out.